Did Jesus of Nazareth have a political mission, or did his spiritual mission include also a political dimension? Welcome and greetings to everyone. Of late, people in diverse walks of life have been increasingly asking me to speak about Jesus and politics. Jesus and politics. They do so because the churches to which they belong, including parachurch groups and informal worship groups, fellowship groups, they rarely touch the subject. They consider the subject to be taboo. I remember being asked to do the ministry of the word for a group at a distance from where I am, so I had to do it on Zoom platform. And when I suggested a topic like Jesus and politics, the person who invited me got a little rattled. And he thought it was too dangerous a subject to be touched by good and pious Christians. Politics, after all, is the domain of the corrupt. Christians are not corrupt, they are all saints, and they don't live in this world where politics rules supreme. So, good Christians do not touch politics, they avoid it like bubonic plague. It's a kind of rough, approximate impression that prevails in our midst. I have to admit that I think very differently. I believe that Jesus was profoundly political. Profoundly political. The only thing is that while we are political in a pragmatic and shallow sense, Jesus was political in a radical and redemptive sense. And this is the main difference I want to develop or focus our thinking on in this video. And I sincerely hope that you've had the patience to listen all the way through to the end. Because not enough clarity is obtained on issues of contemporary relevance like this, critical issues of contemporary relevance like this in our midst. We are afloat in a kind of vague, nebulous environment in which we do not know what is right, what is wrong, and what is right in the approach to a subject that is considered to be wrong, and what is wrong in the subject that is considered to be right, so on and so forth. We are living in a period of sublime and soul-corroding confusion and the impotence it necessarily breeds. So, what about Jesus' politics, and what is the difference between his idea and practice of politics to what Christians consider to be politics today? To me, the core political statement that Jesus ever made is not the statement that political thinkers and political philosophers are quick to identify, namely, the saying of Jesus to the Pharisees who came to test him and trap him, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." That's not the most central, important political statement Jesus made. The core of Jesus' politics, if you want to understand, can be found in the 10th verse of the 10th chapter of the Gospel according to St. John, where Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life, and life in all its fullness." To Jesus, the central concept in politics was not power, but life. And the curse of the mode of politics that is at play in our midst, all over the world, not just in Kerala or in India or in Asia, everywhere in the world. The curse of the kind of politics at play through the length and breadth of the world is that our idea and practice of politics is governed or driven and hag-ridden, if you like, by power, the lust for power, and the corruption it necessarily breeds. and corruption also includes oppression, injustice, so on and so forth, because the salient feature and the inevitable outcome of corruption is oppression. You cannot be free and corrupt at the same time. Whether you are the agent of corruption or you are the victim of corruption, neither the agent nor the victim of corruption can enjoy true freedom or live at ease with oneself or at home with oneself. Okay, now what was Jesus' idea of politics? And how does Jesus connect politics to life and life to politics? In fact, I would say that Jesus' mission, political mission, was a spiritual mission to restore life to politics and politics to life. Or, to put it differently, Jesus' mission was to redeem politics with life. Now, it is a fundamental assumption in the spiritual view of the world that human beings as individuals and as groups are always poised between two possibilities, two options between which they can choose. And that vision was very neatly and powerfully articulated by Moses after having led the people of Israel out of their bondage in Egypt and having led them through the wilderness for 40 long and eventful years. At the fag end of his mission, knowing that his life was about to end, he makes that unforgettable and historically resonant address to the followers. What does he say? You find that statement, I think, in the 19th chapter, verses 29-30 of the book of Deuteronomy, where he says something to this effect. I'm quoting from memory, so please forgive me if it's not the exact quotation, but I'm fairly certain to get a sense of what Moses said to the people. This day I set before you the way of life and the way of death. This day I set before you the way of life and the way of death. Then he says two words which continue to reverberate in my conscience. Choose life. That's what he says. Choose life. That's politics. Will you believe this? The Christological idea of politics can be neatly summarized in two words. Choose life. Which also means that politics can be used as a choice for death. And you would agree with me very likely that the kind of politics in vogue throughout the world is politics orientated not to life but to death. And this is becoming all the more apparent in the Indian context, and that's the reason why I'm clearer than ever before in reflecting and on and articulating this theme. Now the question is this: how do we ensure that the practice of politics remains oriented to life and not to death? And this is the issue. Now, for example, let's examine the concept of good governance. Throughout the history of man's organized life and organized public activity, corporate activity, the foremost of which is politics, people have dreamt of good governance. They have dreamt of benign rulers, even benign dictators. They have dreamt of people-friendly governance. They have dreamt of leaders who are kind, considerate, caring, sensitive to the needs and aspirations of the people, so on and so forth. Even philosophy has invested a considerable amount of time trying to find out how the practice of power may be rendered life-friendly and not allowed to degenerate into an anti-life element. All of Plato's Republic, his magnum opus, is actually guided by this one concern, and therefore he comes up with the solution of the philosopher king, a concept that has never worked in history, and I'm afraid will never work. And instead, his disciple Aristotle nearly lost his life by trying to put a little philosophy into the battle-oriented brain of his dear and distinguished pupil Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedonia. So Aristotle, the great philosopher, incurred the displeasure of this young man, young prince, Alexander, because he tried to bring a little philosophy into the ways of the king. So that's what has happened in history. Another interesting use of philosophy by politicians is the idea of the Superman generated by nature and applied to actual practice of politics by none other than Hitler, Adolf Hitler. I can give you further instances, 2 instances should suffice. In contradistinction to that, you have the image of Jesus Christ, who, as the King of life, bends down and washes the feet of his disciples, having already broken the bread symbolic of his own being, his own personality, and given to his disciples, saying, "Take, eat, this is my body." And I have said on many occasions before that the metaphor of the body in the Judaic or Jewish context means personality as a whole. It's not just this flesh. Jesus was not breaking his fleshly body, but a spiritual body, which is called personality. He says, "This is my personality which must indwell you, dwell in you at all times. Since you are likely to forget these things once I depart, I appoint the sacrament as a reminder. So do this in remembrance of me." That is, do this so that you remember me. And who am I? I'm a spiritual personality. I'm a spiritual body, which is this personality. And each one of you should be like this. Short of that, the idea of sacraments is completely meaningless. It has nothing to do with the idea and vision of Jesus Christ. So, Jesus' idea of politics. As I said, connecting the Old Testament and the New Testament, choose life. All of us know, for example, that the hallmark of democracy is the freedom of choice given to citizens. But unfortunately, in the democratic context and the history of democracy as a whole, not enough attempts have been made to train citizens in the art of exercising this all-important freedom, this great privilege, this great power in their hands, in a way that promotes life rather than death. For example, in the recently concluded general elections in India, as usual, a very large proportion of the successful candidates have hardcore criminal records against them. About 1/3 of the successful candidates have criminal records. Now, if you look at the general population, maybe 0.01% would have something to do with crime. When it comes to leaders, 33-35% of them have something to do with very hard, serious criminal activities. Now, what does it mean? People using this very sacred, very profound privilege of choosing their leaders and thereby determining the quality of governance that they would be entitled to and the kind of future their children and grandchildren would inherit, they choose criminals. They choose people who are oriented to death. This is already prefigured, anticipated in the trial of Jesus Christ, as you would remember, that Pontius Pilate, in his eagerness to spare the life of Jesus Christ, offers to Jews a choice. The choice between Jesus, who went about doing good to all of them, whose goodness they tasted in ample measure, on the one hand, and on the other hand, Barabbas, a known practitioner of violence, a lawbreaker. And you know, in every society, in every culture, lawbreakers have always had an aura of romanticism about them. And I don't have to tell you who the people chose, instigated by the priests of the times. Please remember this, priests of the times. They chose Barabbas. Now this is a perpetual reminder of the danger to which our own freedom of choice can actually lead us. Unless and until a people, individuals, groups, etc., are trained in the art of exercising the freedom of choice in a responsible and life-affirming manner, democracy has got very serious consequences. As Plato said 2,400 years ago, in fact, he sincerely believed that of all forms of government, democracy was the worst, because he said that it allows the worst in a society to come to power. The most mediocre, the most selfish, the meanest in a society who have no qualms in resorting to unethical means and act out of utterly selfish interests, who perfected the art of cheating people, they will come to power, they will seize power. And the people will have to groan under the yoke of their misrule. Plato said it 2,400 years ago. But who heeds? So there is no point in saying that democracy is government of the people, by the people. It will never be for the people if the people are not educated, equipped with some light within in order to use their freedom of choice in a life-affirming manner. So Jesus' politics, now I'm coming to the heart of the matter, needs to be contrasted with the politics that's at play today. Now there are well-meaning people in politics, both among politicians and even more among even more in the civil society. For example, in India there is a very powerful organization dedicated to democratic reforms, a society for bringing about democratic reforms. What's the aim? What's the goal of reform? The goal of reform is to ensure that the people get good governance. Now, Prime Minister Modi, when he was running for the office of the Prime Minister in 2013-14, he came to power in 2014, he was announced as the Prime Minister designate, Prime Ministerial candidate prior to that. He promised good governance, and he borrowed this expression from Henry David Thoreau, the American author, that there will be less government and maximum governance. Minimum government, maximum governance. What has happened? Minimum governance, maximum government. Maximum governance means, according to David Thoreau's thought, that the people would be equipped to take care of themselves. The state will play only an enabling role, not a controlling, oppressive, omnipresent role. The state will not police the life of the people. The state will not dictate what they should do, what they should not do, so on and so forth. The state will not abrogate their personal liberties. And certainly the state will not compel citizens to live in the oppressive, poisonous atmosphere of fear and anxiety. The state will efface itself so that citizens can come into their own and assume responsibility for their welfare, well-being. That's the idea of minimum government, maximum governance. But all of us know what has happened. Now, why is it that this goal that Henry David Thoreau projected, it's a good goal. It's a spiritual goal. It's a kind of idea that can come only in the mind of a person who is spiritually educated. Why is it that while professing to embrace that goal, the very same people move exactly in the opposite direction? That is because of the genius of the politics that we have put in play. That's where we need to understand. That is where Jesus can help. So therefore, the common goal is good governance. No question about it. Whether it is the spiritual idea of politics or Jesus' idea of politics or the worldly idea of politics. In the interest of brevity, let's say, whether it's Jesus' idea of politics or Caesar's idea of politics. After all, in the birth of Jesus Christ, Jesus and Caesar came together, right? The babe and the dictator came together. It's a beautiful pattern if you really meditate on this, but this is not the occasion for me to divert our attention into that, fascinating as that sliver of thought is. Now, in the paradigm of politics symbolized by Caesar, when we use symbols, these are all shorthand denotations. They are not comprehensive statements capable of, enfolding every aspect of the worldly practice or worldly paradigm of politics, but just kind of shorthand marker, as it were. Now, the craving to reform politics so that at least the harmful effects of the practice of politics can be minimized, and the beneficial aspects of the politics that we practice, including the culture of governance it paves the way to, can be increased. Harmful minimized, the beneficial or the benevolent increased. That's certainly a goal which everybody will immediately endorse. But when it comes to taking practical steps in that direction, almost all of them would pull off, not by saying that this is bad, but by saying that it is simply impractical. It cannot happen. So, if I may borrow a few words from the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, we would think of attaining the political ideal as an ideal about which we can only despair. In other words, he would say, we can think of and pursue this ideal only despairingly. That's the word he uses that in a different context, but I'm borrowing that word. We can only contemplate and try to practice or pursue this goal only despairingly, meaning even as with our lips we affirm that it's a good goal to pursue, in our heart of hearts we say, well, what a stupid idea, it can never be realized. That's why Kierkegaard says we despair of this impossible ideal. Not so Jesus. Jesus does not despair of attaining this ideal for a reason, that he approaches this goal of attaining or realizing good governance from an entirely different direction or through a very different roadmap. And what is that? That's what I want to discuss with you in the next maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes, and I'll close. Jesus doesn't set himself after the task of reforming the various systems in vogue. After all, he lived at the time when the Jews were groaning under the yoke of colonial oppression and exploitation. He doesn't say a word about how the Roman system of politics should be reformed. He does not say a word about how Herod, the king, the king of the Jews, could put better political systems in place so that better governance can be guaranteed to the people of the Jewry land. He doesn't say a word about any of these things. What does he do? He focuses his total attention on disinfecting human nature of its propensity to evil. Please understand this. This is what I call the radical solution. The word radical means going down to the roots, as against cosmetic changes, which are what the secular or worldly, well-intentioned, well-meaning, worldly attempts at reforming political systems, political practices, processes and policies. Jesus would say all of that will not work, because end of the day, whatever system you create, whatever policies you enunciate, whatever priorities you trumpet to the world, end of the day, all these things have to be worked by human beings. And human beings work only according to something called human nature. And unless and until, therefore, human nature is reformed and oriented to life, whatever man does, whether it's in the field of politics or in the realm of religion or in the field of culture or even in the field of humanitarian activities, philanthropic enterprises, evil will finally have the last laugh. So, now if I may use a crude illustration, suppose the water supply system in a small town is polluted. People are getting fever, enteric fever. Now, there are two ways of handling this. One is by saying, let's import the best medicines available anywhere in the world so that people who are afflicted by this water and fall sick can be immediately treated and restored back to health. At least they can be prevented from dying. Otherwise, people drop down dead like flies. But there is another solution. The other solution is, let's purify this water, the water supply system. And that is Jesus' politics. Jesus would say, let's purify the water supply system and ensure that the water supply to the people is indeed potable. And in this context, I must tell you the sad thing that in the Indian context, about 25,000 infants or children below the age of 5 die per month because they have no safe drinking water. Just imagine, it's worse than an atom bomb. Unsafe water is killing more babies or children below the age of 5 in India than all the military hardware put together. I mean, if 25,000 children below the age of 5 are dying per month because they don't have safe water to drink, what's the annual toll? It's 250,000 babies, children. Now, the Garin, sorry for the spoonerism. Spoonerism happens when a person is tired, tired. In the regrettable war that's raging in Gaza, reportedly about 15,000 children have been killed. It's a prodigious sorrow for me. Any child, even a scratch happening to a little child, I cannot endure. No matter what political excuse and all that you advance, I cannot accept that a child has to suffer what somebody else is doing. I just can't accept it. Maybe because I had a traumatic childhood. My heart bleeds for the children who are exposed to this trauma day in and day out. But the toll so far is less than 15,000. In a period of 8 months, it's bad enough, it's a nightmare, bad enough. But I tell you, in India, 25,000 children are dying silently, unseen, unheard of, uncared for, every month because they don't have safe drinking water. And this is only as an aside. So Jesus would say, rather than scout around the countries of the world for the best medicines available to treat the people who fall sick because they drink this unsafe, polluted water, this killer of a water, let's clean up the system. Let's make sure that the water that flows into households is potable, it's safe. That's Jesus' politics. It's that politics that's conducive to life in all its fullness. But it's not an easy thing. And this is why most people think it is simply not worth trying it. And as people who are committed to the future of humanity, and particularly as believers, it's our duty to stand steadfastly on the conviction that it is doable. It must be done, even if the cost is prohibitive. Why do you think Jesus died on the cross? He died on the cross not to save some people and take them to heaven. He did not die so that there is a religion called Christianity. He did not die that some priestly class may arise and make fools of everybody else. He did not die that one more religion may come into existence and religious tensions may increase in the world and wars of religions may rage for decades and decades. Wars of religion, conquests, bloodshed, hate. That was not the idea. Exactly the opposite was the idea. Jesus came in order to disinfect human nature. And his death on the cross, which Christians believe is the death of atonement, is a price he paid to unveiled the possibility that human nature can be disinfected of the evil that has penetrated it, orienting human beings in their actions individually and collectively toward death and murder, destruction, rather than life and celebration. This is the reason why, my friends, that political leaders who are warmongers have a terrible appeal to the people. After all, not long ago in India, in 2019, a political party won a landslide victory in India just by mounting an attack on Pakistan. I have nothing to say about the political, military, tactical dimensions of it. I am only saying that the idea of attacking another country is such a powerful, is an idea of such powerful seductive appeal to the people who stand to gain zilch out of it. This euphoria that the very prospect of aggression inflicted on somebody else can activate in human nature. It is not indicative of the romanticism of patriotism. It is nothing but the clinching evidence that the propensity to evil is powerfully at work at the very root of human nature. And it is of this that human nature needs to be disinfected. And the mission of Jesus Christ was to accomplish that, so that once this curse, this poison, this death orientation is removed from human nature and people are rendered free to act in a manner that affirms life rather than validates death, politics will take care of itself. Without that, short of that, nothing will change. It will go only from bad to worse. That's what we have seen so far in history. If you have any instance in history to prove the contrary, please let me know. I'll revise my assumptions, my ideas, my understanding of politics. So, Jesus had a very definite idea of politics. Jesus had a very clear roadmap towards making politics life-friendly. And let me quote again the words that I quoted a short while ago. Jesus said, I have come that they means everyone, nobody is exempted, nobody is outside the remit, the scope of that third person pronoun, they. I have come that they, all people everywhere in the world, humankind as a whole, have come that they may have life, and life in all its fullness. That's politics. That's politics. That alone should be politics. Thank you. Have a good day.